Hi, everyone. We're going to get started now. So thank you all for coming to our talk on VR in education and training. This webinar is hosted by the USC Smart VR Center, which is funded by the USC Office of Research. To learn more about our center and our events, see our website at smartvr.usc.edu or follow us on Twitter at USC_SmartVR. And I'll also put those in the chat. Today, our speakers are Chris Klein, who is the head of education at ClassVR, and Wes Lockhart, who is an educational specialist at Oxford Medical Simulation. Our host is Dr. James Finley, who is the PI of the USC Locomotor Lab, as well as a Smart VR co-director. And with that, we can begin with Chris Klein.
Hi, can you guys hear me now?
Crystal clear.
Excellent, that's good. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Let's go ahead and try to share my screen now and see if it will let me do that. I am sharing and I am now presenting. Are you guys able to see my screen? Fantastic, thank you. First of all, I apologize for the technology issues there. It seems the more people there are, the more likely something's going to go wrong. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you guys today a little bit about ClassVR and how we view virtual reality and augmented reality in education and training. As was indicated, I am the head of education for ClassVR. Our product has been on the market for about 5 years, and we have a pretty distinct different approach than a lot of other people when it comes to VR and AR in education. It really boils down in our world, and primarily that is K-12 education. There's both a consumer model and an education model that I think people need to be aware of. The primary difference is that the consumer model, which most companies that do virtual or augmented reality in education focus on, is they first build a piece of hardware. Then they figure out how can we make that hardware work in an education or training scenario, in which case they will actually then build an app or say go to the App Store and find something that works that kind of goes along with what it is you're trying to get your learners to understand. So at the very bottom of their list is actually the student interaction, because it's more about selling individual pieces of hardware. And there's nothing wrong with this approach at all if apps are the way that you want to go. With ClassVR, we have an inside-out approach. We started off with the idea of how can we make it easy for teachers and instructors to be able to utilize virtual and augmented reality resources with their students. So we started with students need to have access to content. Teachers need to be able to control that content. Teachers need to be able to know what the content is meant for. It goes along with what they're already instructing, already teaching. And at that point, we said, now we can build hardware to go along with it. So it seems like a trite point, but it actually is very critical when you take a look at how are people coming into this new environment. Are they starting with trying to move pieces of hardware, or are they trying to support instruction and build the tools out associated with that? ClassVR as a company, we've been actually, Advanced Education is the parent company. We've been around for about 25 years. ClassVR as a product has been around for almost 6 years at this point. We're in 90 different countries. We're over 40,000 classrooms, over 1 million students daily are utilizing our product. And the reason why is, again, going back to that consumer versus educational approach, it's because we focus on being able to utilize existing infrastructure, existing resources, existing pedagogy, existing lessons for the teacher. So we try to remove as many barriers to entry as possible for them so that they can easily see how this can work for them in their environment. And it really doesn't matter if it's a K-12 classroom or corporate or government or military or healthcare. We actually have implementations across all of those different what are called vertical sectors. It's more a matter of how you're able to do that and how we open up and make this tool easy for the end user to use. Why is virtual reality in the classroom important? Number one, more than anything else, we've learned that it improves outcome because it increases the engagement of the students. It's a more visceral type of learning, even though I will quite often say we are similar to the next iteration of the overhead transparency. We're just another way to deliver resources to the students to enhance our teaching. Being engaged, being immersed into an environment, or actually being underwater swimming with sharks, et cetera, it leaves an imprint. It makes you think. You walk away remembering the experience more, And because you remember the personal experience, you remember the content that goes along with it. It allows you to also increase empathy and understanding because it's very difficult for people to put themselves in a place they've never been at a cost-effective way. This will allow for that. Empathy as well. There's a lot of medical actual implementations that we've done with ClassVR, everything from an autistic student who uses a self-soothing method of swinging on the swings to help calm themselves down after they get triggered in the classroom. Well, in Massachusetts, where this is actually taking place, they can't do that in January. So instead, they went outside. They were able to take a video of swinging on the swing, and they were able to come back, load that on the headset, and keep it near the student. So whenever the student gets triggered in class, the student can put the headset on and be immersed in the environment of swinging on the swing to allow them to self-soothe. 3D modeling is very big. Of course, we do have a front-facing camera. I'll talk about our hardware in just a second. But utilizing 3D modeling with augmented reality, 3D printers, things like that, it really is a very comprehensive way for students to see the project that they're working on in real time. It allows them to visit all over the world, on the moon, in a spaceship, a hot air balloon, you name it, any period of time. And it also allows for both independent as well as group and peer collaboration. So it works across pretty much any learning modality. It's all a matter of how the teacher chooses to implement it and use it in that instruction. So as I said, we started off with one primary development model. We know that if the teachers do not understand and if the teachers cannot use our hardware and software, the students will never get to benefit from it. So we actually don't we don't build for the student. Our headset that everyone focuses on, our headset is merely a consumption appliance. It's more about what's on there. It's more about the content that's on there. So if we needed to get teachers to be able to feel comfortable using it, there were several key questions we had to be able to answer. And we started with these questions first. How can a teacher manage multiple headsets? How can we keep students safe? How can they monitor students' progress and maintain focus during instruction? When we rolled out laptops and tablets to students, we had to pick up proximity control, where instructors had to walk around the room and make sure the students weren't off on other websites or something like that. How do you do that when you're in an environment where the screen is an inch away from the student's eyes? So they need to have these types of tools built in. How can I make sure that all the students are doing the same thing at the same time? It's not just a free-for-all, go on the web and download or play whatever game you want. No, this is an instructional tool. So how can we make sure that everyone's focused on the same thing? We are not a content company. We build a platform. So we needed to make it easy for people to bring in their own content as well. Maintain control of the classroom, keep all the headsets secure and charged, and use both virtual and augmented reality for their existing curriculum. And so the primary thing that we as a company do is, yes, we do provide virtual reality headsets. Everyone sees that first. Again, I always say that's the thing, that's the bling. And everyone knows us for that. But I actually own my own consulting company called Digital Verbiage, because it's not about the nouns, it's about the verbs. It's what you can actually do with any technology that's really the key. So we do provide the full 360, the virtual reality headsets, the headset management. We do provide content that aligns with your existing curriculum, secure storage and charging, and installation, setup, and training. Here's a quick look at the hardware. Yes, we sell it in sets of 8. We sell it in sets of 30. We do have both a standard and a premium model. The premium model does come with a USB-driven hand controller, but that can also be purchased separately for our standard model. Easy to use. Again, it is a consumption appliance. It is built on an Android box. So there actually is an Android device inside of there. But what we've done is we've installed at the boot ROM level of that device our software. When it boots up, you never see Android. It goes directly into ClassVR. So it's like a sandboxed environment that the teachers are able to control and manipulate all through a web-based management portal that I'll talk about in a second. We do have a front-facing camera, so it does allow for augmented reality as well. And our goal is I don't want to be the concept vehicle at the latest auto show. I want to be the Toyota Corolla. I want to be the one that works for 95% of all of the instructional environments, all of the teachers out there. I want us to have something that works at scale in enterprise level deployments, not just in the very narrow, small niche features, which there is a place for that. And there are devices that do that. That's not us. We're not going to be the kind of where it's $8,000 a headset that you have to plug into a high-powered CPU. That's not our approach. We want to be the everyman's VR and AR offering. The way we do this is actually through a secure student interface. As I said, it is a consumption appliance. The students put the headset on and they can only access the content that the teachers have chosen to make available for them ahead of time. If I only want you to have access to a 3D model of the human eye, of the femur, and a video, let's say it's a 360 video of being in the bloodstream and watching the white blood cells move around. If I just put those three things on the headset, that's all the students have access to for that class period. So I've already put up the framework of where they're even allowed to go and explore. Remember, go back to the concept that I said about it is the next iteration of the overhead transparency. Our design philosophy is that we are to enhance your existing instruction. So as a teacher, I'm going to introduce a topic. I'm going to do direct instruction with the students. Then I will have the students put the headsets on to enhance and reinforce what I instructed them on. Then we take the headsets off and we discuss, we bridge to our next topic and move forward. So again, ours is an instructional tool. We actually do not see very frequently, and we don't really encourage with our system to have 30 students with 30 headsets on for 45 minutes at a time. We are an on again, off again technology. This is all done through a web-based management portal for the teacher. This is the platform that I was talking about. So the teachers log into their browser. They're able to go in from any device, could be their phone, could be a laptop, Chromebook, desktop, makes no difference. They're able to find their content in our expandable libraries. They're able to build together those playlists to focus in the students on what they want them to do. And then from that same interface, once they actually start teaching, they're able to see in real time. You'll notice on the picture on the left-hand side, where you're looking at the hot air balloon, the little goggle symbols off to the right-hand side, it shows in real time where all the students are actually looking on whatever resource it is you're using. So I can see where the students are looking. I can see what exactly they're looking at. As a teacher, I could then click anywhere on the image or video to identify a point of information. And on the student's consumption device, the headset, it would actually give them a breadcrumb trail that they could follow to see exactly what it was that I was pointing out and that I'm explaining to them, whereas I'm providing the audio for them in that scenario. Also in the lower right-hand corner of that screen, you see where it says Class View. Class View is really exciting because it allows me to actually see a live video thumbnail of every single headset in the classroom. And I can click on any one of those and take that full screen. Now, a lot of times people may initially think, well, that's great if you're Big Brother, but that's not actually why it's there. We know that there's a certain percentage of the population that no matter what you do, cannot do virtual or augmented reality, whether it be motion sickness, vertigo, astigmatism, et cetera. And in a learning environment, what do you do with those students that are not able to participate? Giving them a worksheet is one avenue, or the other avenue is I can go ahead and take, let's say Wesley's headset, and I can actually put full screen on my projected image, on my interactive whiteboard, on my flat panel display, and the rest of the class or the students that can't participate can actually still see what Wesley is doing. So they're able to still consume the content in a 2D manner as opposed to an immersive manner. When we talk about content, I think it's really important that, again, I emphasize we are not an app model. Our content that we talk about falls into really 4 different categories. We focus on the use of 360 images, VR videos, 3D models, and something called explorable scenes. Excuse me. So we have over 1,800 current experiences that are out there. And everyone always asks me in K-12, they say, well, does it align to my curriculum? Does it align to my curriculum? And I always look at them and say, well, does a pull-down map align to your curriculum? And they say, well, no. And I said, well, exactly. That's a resource that you're using to teach whatever's you're teaching, which is what is aligned to the state standards. So again, we are looking at a platform to make it easy for teachers to get virtual and augmented reality content resources in front of the students. We also allow you to bring in your own content, which is really, really critical. And that's what allows us to work across all those different verticals that I mentioned earlier. The fact that if you have a 360 image as either a JPEG or a PNG, or if you have an MP4 video for VR video, or if you have an STL or GLB 3D model file, you can actually bring those in and enhance and expand your library based off of content that you've used your own 360 camera to go out and capture, that you found online, etc. So when I talk about, for example, the fire department in Georgia that originally purchased a set of 8 of our headsets because they wanted to use it as a cool outreach mechanism to go out to the schools, because everyone loves VR. Once they learned that they could record their own content, they took a camera, they screwed it onto the top of their fireman's helmet, they went into their controlled burn building and recorded what it's like to be in a 360 video of an active fire. Now they use that same 8-pack with their fire trainees because they understand that they're now able to utilize it in ways that it's not us holding the keys to the kingdom. It's us providing that platform that lets you take this in whatever direction you want. So again, in closing, I want to be very conscious of the time here, and I thank everyone for taking the time to listen. I'll love to answer some questions later. But to me, it really boils down to when you're looking at what you're trying to do with VR or AR in a classroom or in a training environment, the question is, are you looking at a consumer model which is going to focus exclusively on apps, which is great. There are some wonderful training applications out there. They're very specific. And if that's what you need, there's lots of great pieces of hardware out there that allow for that. Very powerful pieces of hardware. If you're looking for just a more generalized approach, then you're wanting to be able to kind of custom take it wherever you want. You've got access to content, but you don't have an app developer yourself or what have you. We follow the educational model approach, starting with the needs of the students and the needs of the teacher, and then building outward from there. And that is, in my opinion, what separates ClassVR from everyone else.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. Next, we have Wes Lockhart presenting on Oxford Medical Simulation.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, good, great. I want to share my screen. And okay. So I'm gonna do a little kind of PowerPoint really quickly. And I think just the best thing is gonna be to get in and showcase what OMS can do, what VR can do, and kind of how we utilize it. So brief info about myself. My name is Wes. I'm an educational specialist here at Oxford Medical Simulation. I also teach using VR simulation at a public medical school here in Southern California as well. So I actually instruct this with our medical students on a day-to-day basis, utilizing this platform. All right, so our goal for OMS is to create better clinicians at the end of the day, and that's by educating students. We have high school students all the way up to practicing attending physicians. And so Chris mentioned, right, starting with a student approach. That's incredibly powerful. That's what we want to do. But we want a little bit step further. We're a little more specialized, and we're starting with a patient-centered approach. What does the patient need, right? And how can these presentations of these patients that you're about to see inform and be utilized to train the people that are eventually going to be taking care of them? So our method can be, or our platform can be accessed a couple different ways. We don't sell a headset. We utilize some of the bigger brands of VR headsets to kind of get into the ecosystem here. But our systems can be used in full immersive VR or in Windows and Mac. When I demo in 5 minutes from now, it'll be on my computer. The only difference is that how I would interact with the patient will change a little bit. So we have a couple ways that we can do this. So oftentimes in physical simulation, if I'm training some students on a mannequin, a robot, something like that, a task trainer, it's hard for me to know every single action that they do. And so to be able to really standardize and know that I'm creating the same experience for every learner that's going to get access to these cases, it's a burden being taken off of me as the educator, right? And I'm able to see just detailed reports of how they performed, what they did, areas that they could improve on. So one of the things that we wanted to do is focus on what VR can do well right now and prepare for what it can do well in the future. So right now, VR is not the best at psychomotor skills, right? So if I'm going to have to, suture up a patient's open wound after surgery, the controllers are not very adept for that, right? We can do it. There are some places that try to teach you some of those skills, and there's some things that we do offer on that aspect. But the biggest thing that OMS is trying to focus on is the critical thinking and reasoning of the learner. And so they're presented with a bunch of information on the screen. The patient's getting sick, the patient's improving, the patient has all these different systems, all these different symptoms. What can they do? How can they prioritize what they need to do? And how can they work with the team around them to do that? That's what VR can really do. It can put them into a scenario that's very realistic to what they might see if they're rotating through the hospital or if they're in the clinic, and how do they kind of adapt and cope when all of these things are being thrown at them. So there's a few different libraries that we utilize. So we have pediatrics for things like asthma, respiratory distress, allergic reactions, and anaphylaxis. Mental health is becoming increasingly popular, and for the right reasons, right? And so being able to see a patient that's experiencing an anxiety attack, to see a patient that's suffering from schizophrenic episodes, things like that, to be able to see what that looks like before you ever get to see them in the ward can be really helpful to help you empathize and know how to properly care for those patients. OB, which is huge, right? So birth, how do you care for a mother that maybe is experiencing some difficulties in birth? How do you care for the infant after the child is born? All of those things are really powerful. And then I should say, just because I know we have a variety of different learner populations here, we also have examination modules. And so most of our instruction is for people who are about to enter into practice and take care of patients, but we also have these examinations that are available for any level. We have high schools all the way up through working healthcare professionals that utilize these modules to be able to practice examinations. So in medical school currently across the country, we hire actors to come in and play these patients and have their heartbeat, and you listen to them with your stethoscope, or you check your reflexes and those kinds of things. And it's really useful and it's great. But those people are very rarely sick, right? So if I want to hear what a murmur sounds like, or if I want to see what someone who has active pneumonia in both lungs sounds like, that's hard for that actor to portray. VR can help us here. And so these examination modules allow us to look at healthy versus sick patients to see that progression of, okay, here's this patient that maybe had some kind of crackles or wheezing in their lungs. You gave them a treatment. Now, how are they here? How do their lungs sound now? Are they more clear? Can they breathe better? And so you're able to do that at the patient's time. And stimulation is incredibly expensive to get people in and buy these really expensive mannequins. I love them. They're so fun, but it's a big barrier for entry. So to be able to do that in a VR environment where the learner can access it at their own time, I can say, hey, by next Friday, log into your headset, and I want you to have done this heart attack case, and we're going to talk about it and debrief it, and maybe use the mannequin for something specialized after that. It's a really unique way of doing things. And then really quickly, before I hop into the demo, we do have some multiplayer components as well. And so students from all across the country, especially in COVID times, we were getting our students kind of spread out. And to be able to work together as a team to take care of one patient was really powerful. We can have them, one play the nurse, one play the physician, the pharmacist, the next of kin, whatever they need. They're able to take care of the patient together. At the end, they go into this really pretty debriefing scenario where the faculty member can actually instruct them and say what they did right or wrong, areas that they could improve on, areas of strength that they did really great in. And then I should talk really quickly about our communicate. So this is where you're able to actually talk back and forth with the patient, and using deep learning, machine learning, and like voice analysis, you're able to have a conversation as if the patient was in the room with you. So that's really exciting, something we just unveiled kind of this year. And then something coming later this year is that hand control. So there's certain procedures that we've decided that are very useful and can be trained adequately using the controllers that we have now available to us. And so things like putting in a catheter for someone that's having difficulty urinating, maybe starting an IV or drawing blood, those kinds of things aren't very finicky, as opposed to some of the other things like suturing, like intubation, like those kinds of things. So you're able to actually use the controllers that come with the headset to do physical interventions on the patient. And so, okay, give me 1 second to load up my program, and I will show you what it looks like on our end and answer any questions with Chris at the end. So as you can see, I will not be wearing a headset for this. It's hard to give a talk in a headset, but we will go. I will share my screen and let me know if you can hear. And Kira, you can yell at me if I'm getting close to time. There's so much to talk about.
Hello, doctor. I'm really worried about this new patient, George. He's just come into the department and looks really unwell. I've not got any background information yet, but I'm really worried about him.
Can you hear? We good?
Can you come and see him now?
Okay. Thanks, James.
Hello, George. What can I do for you today?
Hi, Doc. Thanks for coming. I feel terrible. I hope you can find out what's going on.
Me too, George. Me too. Luckily, I know what's going on, so I can help you. One thing that I want to point out really quickly is just the power of VR. So right now, we're not in a virtual headset environment where I'm looking at my computer screen and looking at you on my other monitor. But that first thing that the nurse just said is, "Hello, doctor." That might be something that a student who maybe they're from, a place where there's no doctors in their family. No one's gone to college. No one's done it. To be able to wear a headset or be on a screen and be addressed like that can trigger like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I want to do this. What's the roadmap for me to get to this point where someone's going to call me that in real life? It's just a really powerful little example of how VR can really change things and begin to change mindsets of students that maybe never thought of healthcare or any profession that utilizes VR as an option. So if I was in my headset, I could walk around, I could interact with these environments, I could look at George and let's see, okay, George, why are you here?
Can you tell me about what's brought you in today?
Well, I was fine yesterday, but I started feeling unwell this morning. I've been hot and really shivery for a few hours. I've never felt this unwell before.
So I can continue going on that, not to get too deep into the medical management in this scenario, but just to see what we can do. We'll see George's heart rate, his blood pressure, he has a fever, he's not doing great on his oxygenation status. I can call out to look for some medications if I wanted to give any to him. I could look up his electronic medical record to see maybe if anything's happened in the past. Let me go ahead and do an exam on him to see. Let's listen to his lungs together. So they sound okay. If you're not a healthcare professional, he sounds these are fine. But they could be sick. He could be sick, right? And if I were to listen to his heart, it's kind of fast beating. So maybe I'd hear something there too. So we can do that in a second. But I want to go here. Oftentimes our students are not they're not providers yet. They don't always know what to do. So to be able to reach out and kind of look at this as like a phone a friend. So here's all these different specialties that I can talk to. I can call the cancer department. I can call a rapid response if he was deteriorating. He's not. He's going to be fine. Or I can call my attending, who's the person that, in this case, you would report to get advice. So let's go ahead and do that and see what she thinks.
Okay, I understand you're worried about this patient, but I think you've missed some steps here. Go back, take a focused history, examine the patient, and then think about some basic investigations to see if we can identify where this fever is coming from. He's going to need a fluid bolus, and I would be more inclined to give antibiotics than not. Call me back if you need more help, or there are guidelines on the computer.
Perfect. So all of those little things, she said fluid bolus, to get a better patient exam, get a better history. If I had done any of those actions, the phone would not have told me that. So it's actually able to modify the actions that I do in the scenario to be able to help me. So if I would have done a pretty good job, she would have said, hey, Wes, like you did a great job. I'm going to come and see this patient in a few minutes, right? And so I'd be able to go from there. Let's get a little bit better of an exam. Let's listen to his heart. I think that will help. So somewhat fast. Again, his blood pressure is still low. I'll get something on that. Need an IV for that. Come on, Wes. One thing I should also mention is this is George. He's our patient here. He has sepsis. I'll give the game away. But right now I'm coming in as the physician. I like to do that. It's what I work with. It's what I'm comfortable with. But you can take care of George as a physician, as a nurse, as a CNA, as a pharmacist. So there's all these different scopes that you can come into the scenario and do the things that you would do as that profession. So it gives you a lot of power. So let's get some fluid on board for him.
Those fluids are up and running.
Let's give him something for his
I'll let you know
headache.
when the bag's finished. That's given.
And let's give him. Let's see if he has any allergies. I'm gonna get in
Are you
trouble for that.
allergic to anything?
Yes, I'm very allergic to penicillin. I had it once and my throat swelled up and I couldn't breathe. I had to go to intensive care. It was terrifying.
Well, let's not give him any penicillin then, so that's good. I could draw blood tests. Again, we can get in there and I can give a whole lecture on how to interpret blood results and those kinds of things. Not the point of today, but just for you to see what there is to do. Should I have washed my could I have washed my hands before I touched the patient? Hint, yes. Could I have asked my nurse to do some of these things for me to prioritize different skills? Yes. Can I do a better job of keeping George informed as I'm going through these things? And so in a second, I'm going to walk out of this room, you'll see in a second, and I'm going to bring up a checklist, and it's going to showcase all the things I did right and I didn't do so right, and we'll end my little spiel on that. But okay, so how did that feel? Because sometimes it can be very stressful for these learners. What did you do well? I mean, I introduced myself to George. I think I have an idea of what's going on. What didn't I do so well? I gave him medication before asking for allergies. I didn't wash my hands before I touched him. What would I do to improve my future practice? Again, these are just self-prescribed things. And then one second. Let me share my webpage with you. Zoom meeting. There we go. Okay. Okay, so this is what the learner then gets after they've completed the VR scenario. So they're able to see what the diagnosis was, some of the things that they did well, and I as the faculty member have complete control over what they see, what they don't see, what was measured in the scenario, what wasn't. I got IV access, and so here's the stuff I did bad. So I skipped I didn't wash my hands, I didn't talk to the nurse. Okay, so I can hide all of these if I don't want my student to get discouraged. I got a weighted score of 14 because I didn't give them antibiotics in a septic patient. But I can say, fun case, hope that George feels better soon, and I can save this. Then as the faculty, I would then see that reflection, I would see their score, I could see, oh man, all of my students are really doing a bad job interpreting their blood results, right? Not recognizing an infection or whatever. I can then go back to my curriculum and say, when was the last time I talked about how to interpret a CVC? When was the last time I talked about how a BMP can help you in this aspect and care for patients? And see, maybe I did and they just didn't listen and I need to focus that again, or maybe that's a genuine gap in my curriculum that I need to do before these students start taking care of patients. So I'm able to see these analytics at a learner or a cohort wide level and see, okay, how's this average score? As you can see, I test a lot, so hence the craziness. How many scenarios I have left to run for these students, how I stack up compared to them. So there's a lot of power just on that side. And then I will just end with how that can compare with these competencies. So for nurses, we have the NCLEX, you might have heard of that. For medical schools, we have the MCAT and the USMLE STEP exams. And so to be able to assign scenarios based on the weaknesses of your learners to try to get them to do well in those exams, it's just a huge deal. And so that's called tags and competencies, as you can see. So I can actually assign various scenarios. We have over 100 of different patients for the learners to take care of. Based on either US or UK or even Canada, and assign these scenarios just to help them kind of prepare them for what they're about to experience, either in their exams or on their rotations. So that is it for me. I think it'll give us more time for Q&A, which I think Chris and I would both be grateful for, to answer any questions that you might have. Just about how we utilize our learners, how we can envision this place, this technology going in the future. Happy to help and expand on anything I said today. So thanks so much, everyone.
All right, so thank you both, Chris and Wesley, for giving great overviews on the applications and hardware that you provide. We're really excited to just learn more about VR in education. So for those of you who maybe missed the introduction, my name is James Finley. I am the director of the Locomotor Control Lab at USC, and I'm also one of the co-directors of our Smart VR Center. So I'll be moderating our discussion session for today. And so for those in the audience, if you have questions, feel free to either use the hand raise option. So if you go to the reaction section of your Zoom window and choose raise hand, then we can call on you, or you could type your question in the chat. So maybe to kick things off, I'll pose a question to actually both Chris and Wes. Well, Chris mostly. So you mentioned this idea that with ClassVR, teachers are able to upload their own content, and I thought that was a really exciting feature. And one of the things I was wondering is if you to what extent do teachers use this? Are they aware of sort of the world of 3D content that's available to them for teaching? How do you do any work to educate them on what might be freely available that they can bring into their
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think VR and AR in the classroom has sort of gone through several waves over the last 5 years. And you've got, your early adopters, you've got those on the cutting edge, you've got those on the bleeding edge, and no direct reference to what Wesley was talking about as far as the bleeding edge there goes. But you have different waves of people coming in, and each one of them, it's as if they're seeing it for the first time. And in some cases, they actually are. Obviously, the consumer market plays a lot with the overall zeitgeist of understanding what VR could potentially possibly be for good and bad. But they're coming in and they're asking a lot of these questions. At the same time, comparable technologies are also dropping in price and they're becoming more mainstream. So normally 5 years ago, if I would have talked to a teacher and said, oh, you can take a 360 camera out, you can record your own images and your own video, and they go to look it up and they're looking at a $2,000 camera, and they're like, well, really, my school's going to buy that for me, et cetera. But now you can go on Amazon and buy like a Ricoh Theta for $350. So different schools now are looking at how that can impact. One example is I have a school district in Louisiana. The elementary school librarian, out of the library funds, actually bought 4 360 cameras. And what they do is they keep it in the library, and any faculty member, student, family, or staff member that goes anywhere on vacation can check those out, as long as when they bring the cameras back, the images and videos are allowed to be uploaded into the school's library. So now they're getting additional geographic opportunities because they're just making it available for people to go, and the people don't have to have their own camera. They're able to use the schools. The other big thing is, as people are looking at STEM education, a lot of it is almost everyone that talks about STEM talks about a 3D printer. And that 3D printer, I love it as a technology, but it takes 6 hours to print one thing, and it costs about $65 in filament to print one widget, let's say. Whereas I can take that GLB or STL file that I'm sending to the printer, upload it into our management portal, have it as an augmented reality model that the students are holding in their hand in a matter of minutes, and every student has it, not just the one student that is going to pick it up tomorrow when they come in after it finishes printing. So the comparable technologies are making it very easy and easier to be able to bring in third-party resources. There's still a lot of stuff going on with people wanting to license content and how they license content. And it's not developed for end users. It's developed a lot for B2B or business to business. So there are some challenges there, but by and large, teachers are really finding a lot of ways to take it into new and novel directions because their assistive technology has also dropped in price.
Great, thanks, Chris. Any questions from the audience? So, we have a question from Octavio. You want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, perfect, thank you. First of all, as I said in the chat, thank you both for a great talk. It was really interesting, both like to see what these kind of technologies can do now in a teaching environment. But so I would like to have, if possible, like the perspective on you both on how soon do you see these VR technologies as an ubiquitous technology, like in classrooms? For example, like right now it's as projectors or laptops. Probably 30 years ago, it was very difficult to picture that in a normal classroom environment. But it seems like we're getting, with every year, closer to having this as a common technology in the classroom, hopefully. So I don't know if you have any perspectives of how soon can we start seeing these kind of technologies. Hopefully with the help of companies like yours, we're going to be one step closer to that. Do you have any comments on this?
I can go first, Chris. Yeah, so Thank you, Octavio. But I really think currently right now, especially in like the medicine and nursing and healthcare, it's a program differentiator. So when they're getting these new students, they're saying, oh, and we utilize VR for our education, right? Places like Stanford, they use complete VR anatomy for their teaching of their dissection courses, right? I personally think that it's still really helpful to cut a body up, just being honest, right? But to have the ability to do both is huge, right? And just have and to always be able to ask, like Chris mentioned earlier, it's a tool, it's a resource, it's a pull down map, it's a whatever the best way to teach your learning objectives are. If that's VR, great, and it does amazing in so many different applications. If it's getting in there and seeing a body and being able to hold an organ in your hands, that's still not there yet. We're not in a holodeck level yet for VR, right? And so I think it's coming back to like asking the questions of like, what do I want to teach, right? And like as the overhead projector was pretty ubiquitous across campuses, right? And it probably increased when that cost went down, just like Chris mentioned. For $300 you can get an Oculus Quest 2 and experience a lot of cool things, right? And so that is coming down really quickly. So I think it's going to expand. It's rapidly expanding. And as places use it, it's kind of an arms race. It's like, oh man, like USC has this, like UCLA better get on it, to do that, to keep up, with what the students want, because they love it.
I completely agree. I think that the big hurdle here is the cost to entry, and depending on what level you're looking at. Obviously, if you're talking about a medical school, there's a significant price tag associated with going to high caliber medical schools, the tuition, and all of that. So there's money and funding there. And I think it's really great in the type of Oxford medical environment scenario where you've got different scenarios and things like that. But as I said earlier on, they're very specific. I would not try to do on my platform what they're doing with their software, because it's a very small segment of the potential audience of what I'm trying to accomplish here. But what they're doing extremely well. They're going very deep. I'm going very wide. So on one hand, you need to have the money, and it is a competitive environment where you do have USC and UCLA and Stanford and everyone else that's saying, hey, we need to compete, so we're going to put some of this money that's coming in from tuition into that. In K-12 education, one of the biggest things that has actually come out now has been the what's called ESSER funding, which has to do with the CARES Act and the money coming back from the whole COVID relief funds. So there's ESSER and there's EANS funding that's available out there now. And our technology does fit into that loss of learning gap function that allows schools to be able to use us as a chargeable purchase that they can then get reimbursed for at a certain percentage level, kind of like E-rate or some of the other federal fundings that go with that. To me, I think the big thing that's pushing this all is the entire concept of the metaverse and what that actually means and how we look at that. And, we as a company are actually coming out with, and it'll be announced very shortly, but basically we're going to be Eduverse.com, not Metaverse, Eduverse. And one of the things is because we have another piece of software that if you remember, I mentioned 4 different types of content: images, video, 3D models, and explorable scenes. Explorable scenes is a separate software offering from us called Avantis World. And what it is, it allows me as a teacher to be able to take, for example, a computer-generated environment such as on the moon or a colonial settlement or, in a space station or whatever. And it's cool because I can put content in there and have the students explore it individually. But what's more impressive is the fact that we can also have the entire class meeting in there in real time, regardless of distance, with headsets, and also regardless of device, by the way. So some of them can be on a laptop, some of them can be in a headset, some of them can be on their tablet or phone, and it supports voice over IP. But the big thing is Zoom was huge in education as a result of COVID. The problem that K-12 education had with Zoom was students didn't want to turn their cameras on. They didn't want to be seen on the camera. They didn't want people to see what their bedroom looked like or anything like that. With Avantis World and with the Eduverse that's coming out, everyone is represented by an avatar. So a small, simple avatar, no arms, so there's no manipulation or anything like that, like some of the stories out there have said about what's happening in the metaverse. But it allows you to basically bring students into a way that you're able to have real-time conversation. Maybe you use the curriculum that we provide for you as a sample, or maybe you just say, no, I'm just going to teach in the Valley of the Dinosaurs today because it's a cool place to be, and I can find content to point out to the student, and we're all there together talking in real time. I think that's going to really push a lot of technologies along faster. And I think that ultimately, though, it's going to boil down to funding and money. That's always going to be the limiting factor for anyone. But the ESSER and Eames funds in K-12 has definitely helped promote this a lot faster.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Octavio. Anyone else before I jump back in? Okay. Yes, so I have a question for both Wesley and Chris. So one of the beauties of online content, using laptops in school and things is that I can, as a student, I can take it home, right, and interact with the content there. So what do you see as the role of VR, educational VR for, at-home learning, whether it's, through structured programs like medical school or K-12, or for people just to learn, on their own with a lot of the more sort of open online forms of education?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's really powerful. I'll answer it in the structured and then in the kind of free form question that you answered. So for me, especially in COVID, I had to make very specific that anytime my learners were on campus, it was like in smaller groups and and it was just, there was a lot of hurdles that I had to jump through to be able to say, okay, sometime in the next week, I want you to take care of a patient in VR that's experiencing a heart attack. I don't care when you do it, whenever you get time. You might have just come off a night shift in the ER or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. When you come at Friday at 9 a.m., we're going to take care of that together. When we can start on second base because we're assuming that you've done so. So it actually makes like my faculty burden a little easier, which is really helpful. And that's very structured, very high level. But one of the things that Chris mentioned earlier is if you just you could probably just download the Oculus app on your phone or the Google goggles or whatever and put the cardboard thing on and watch a journey of the cell go through the body. That's incredible. And it's amazing. And to be able to do that's a very hard thing to conceptualize on a textbook with my overhead projector while I'm writing things and looks like the scribblings of a madman. To be able to follow the blood cell getting oxygenated into the lungs, getting pushed out from the left ventricle, like incredible, right? You can do that for free right now. And it just starts to trigger little things. Oh, I really like that. Like, man, my chemistry class, like, it's really difficult, but if I can get through this, I want to learn more about that, right? And so they're becoming how you can go into Best Buy right now and buy a headset that would give you an incredible experience utilizing free apps that you would never have to buy anything for. Again, and then if you're interested, you can start to talk to one of our companies that gets very specialized, or one of Chris's that does broad on the educator side to get as many students in as possible. But just getting them to think of VR as a medium to experience learning and not gaming and not what all of those other things is a big step forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that I mentioned when I was talking that I don't really want to see, as a general rule, I don't want to walk into a classroom and see 30 students with 30 headsets on for 45 minutes at a time. Part of the reason why is because too often with any type of technology that comes into the classroom, I remember even when we started to utilize VHS and video and television and things like that into instruction, it can be done in a way that quickly cheapens the actual instructional approach. There are times and places for it. Ultimately, it's really a matter of what content do you need at that time. I used to do a lot with photography, and a good friend of mine once told me, like, the best camera you could ever have is the one you have on you when you need that shot. I don't care if it's a phone, I don't care if it's film, I don't care if it's digital, I don't care how big the zoom is. If you got the shot, if the environment's right, the technology doesn't matter. Just take the doggone picture. And I think that's sort of where we are in a lot of respects. The fact that You can, like Wesley mentioned with his software, there's a lot of stuff you can do without the headset. There is also the desktop version, because once you start to get out of the controlled environment of the instructional room or the classroom, you start to get into bandwidth issues. You start to get into a lot of other technology issues, home costs then as well. Yes, we all want broadband everywhere in the country with everyone on 5G and all of that great stuff. We're not there yet overall across all environments. So until we can actually have that complete coverage that we want, that's always going to be a factor. So as I was saying with the Eduverse, for example, you can have a headset. You can also do it on a tablet. You can also do it on a laptop. You can also do it on a $200 Chromebook. It's more of a matter of, I can get you into the same environment. The format is a little bit different, and some people will have a more immersive environment, but remember, 4 to 6% of the population can't do that anyway. They can't because of other issues. So we're never going to leave them out completely. I think the key is being able to get those shared spaces that the technology, the hardware doesn't necessarily have to be the sole delivery factor. It's more of just the medium that it's being delivered, one avenue that's being delivered. We talk about visual learners, auditory learners, et cetera. It's the same thing. Virtual reality learners are a modality of learning that should not completely replace visual, auditory, social, emotional, or anything else. They all need to be present, and this is one avenue that can bring a lot to it, but shouldn't be the end-all, be-all, in my opinion.
Excellent answers. All right, we have just a few more minutes left, and maybe I have another big picture forward-looking question. Maybe you could give a minute or two answer to. Let's imagine that. So I have an almost 3-year-old, our youngest child, and when he's 13, what is his world going to look like in the classroom? What is it that you think is coming down the pipeline? What do you wish we had that doesn't exist, that will really help to, make education more accessible for people all across the spectrum?
Well, if I were to jump in on that, I would say I think that a lot of we've come a long way in tearing down a lot of the walls of the traditional instructional environment. We've rethought the physical spaces, we've rethought the technological spaces, and I think we've really kind of opened it up and gone with almost an open floor plan, shall we say, for lack of a better term. I think that's going to continue. I think that especially in K-12 education and things like that, we've seen what's happening in the industry right now when it comes to teacher retention and substitute teachers and things like that. I think we're going to see schools being able to expand and bridge between the physical and the virtual environments, not only from a technology perspective, but from a curriculum perspective. So it may be very difficult for this rural school to offer Mandarin as a language. However, when you bring in what is available by technology now, when you bring in these these virtual experiences as well, you could very easily teach a very robust course. So I think there's going to be a lot of outsourcing almost, or multiple experts being able to bring in content for the overall good of the student. And it won't fall necessarily on that local school district that receives very low coal miners' tax dollars to be able to afford a teacher to come in and teach Mandarin, because there's going to be 15 different options. And we're already going down that path with virtual colleges and virtual high schools and things like that. That's where I see it going, is there could be a lot more choice because of the different types of formats available to the students. And therefore, I think the students are going to get a much more custom tailored type of approach to education than they currently have.
Yeah, James, as someone with a 9-month-old, I think about that all the time. So what her life will look like in a little bit. I think right now the technology is here, right? And our utilization of it is here. Okay, the tech is actually surpassing how we're utilizing it. And like we just don't, because teachers are used to what they're used to. They're used to the overhead projector, the PowerPoint, all those things. Once that happens, technology is going to keep going faster. We're going to be in Ready Player One, level places like quicker than we think, right? Which is exciting as a gamer, as an educator, as a fan of technology, all of those things. It's incredibly exciting. But I want to get there first, where the dream of the educator can match what can be provided, right? So right now you might have seen HoloGlass, Google Glass, or HoloLens or Google Glass, and those things are very interesting, but the tech is tough, right? Like it's a very small window of field of view, and if you're out of it, it totally skews everything. That's going to get better, right? And we're going to have AR, yeah, with money, with development costs, with all those things, and people pouring into it. The excitement being there outside of this really niche, like business application. It's going to get there. AR, I think, is going to be huge, right? Right now we have the full occlusion. Your whole field is covered up by glasses. You know, supposedly Apple wants to get into this space next year, right? Well, let's see what they come up with and do that. And so it's hard to tell. The only thing we can know for sure is that we're going to get it wrong. Whatever we think, it's going to be more than that. And that's exciting to just be a part of it on the level that this is still the ground level of VR, right? And so to be able to look back in that in 10 years, you know, when your child's 13, you're gonna be like, oh, I was at the ground level of that, and I couldn't have imagined where it was gonna go.
Great, yeah, thank you both for two great answers. Yeah, for many of us at USC and who are affiliated with the Smart VR Center, we're thinking about using VR for interventional purposes or assessment purposes, whether it's physical occupational therapy or psychiatry. And one of the things challenges that we always face is to think about how do we bring the technology, how do we design our applications in a way that they are usable by both sets of end users, right? The patient and the clinician. So very similar to the learner and the teacher for your model. But yeah, you're both right that, the technology is progressing much more quickly in many cases than the sort of content or the application end of things for us as well. But yeah, the future's really bright and exciting. So with that, I think we will wrap up today's talk and panel. So thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you, Chris and Wesley, for coming to share with us. As Kira mentioned in the chat, the recording will be made available via our YouTube channel. And hopefully you all will stay tuned for our next events.
Bye, thanks everyone.
Thank you all. Have
Excellent.
a great
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.